My name is Myra Goodwin. I'm 32 years old. And 3 years ago? My father looked at my pregnant sister across the dinner table and said 6 words that destroyed our family forever. You are no daughter of mine. No hesitation. No questions. No, are you okay? Just judgment. Cold. Immediate. Final. Then my mother stood up slowly. Walked to the front door. Opened it. And pointed toward the driveway like my sister was a stranger trespassing in her house instead of the daughter she gave birth to. I still remember the rain that night. Heavy. Violent. The kind that makes streetlights blur through windows. And I remember standing frozen in the hallway watching my 23-year-old sister step outside carrying nothing but a backpack. And an ultrasound photo. That was it. No suitcase. No coat. No family left. Interesting thing about family destruction. It rarely sounds dramatic in the moment. Sometimes it sounds like silverware clinking against dinner plates while somebody quietly loses their entire life. Josie called me 43 minutes later. 11:14 p.m. I remember the exact time because trauma brands timestamps into your nervous system permanently. Her voice barely sounded human. Broken. Wet with crying. Like she'd been holding her breath for an hour straight. I unlocked my apartment door before she even finished speaking. And when I opened it, she was standing there soaked to the skin. Mascara running down both cheeks. Hair plastered against her face. One hand gripping the ultrasound picture so tightly the corners had bent inward. Honestly? She didn't look pregnant. She looked abandoned. I didn't ask questions. Some moments are too raw for interrogation. People don't always need advice first. Sometimes they need towels. Tea. Silence. And a locked door. I pulled her inside. Wrapped her in the old blue blanket from my couch. Started boiling water for tea. And waited. Finally. After almost 10 straight minutes of silence. Josie whispered. Dad said I'm not his daughter anymore. Pause. Mom opened the door and told me to leave. Interesting. Because even now, 3 years later, that second sentence still hurts me more. Not my father screaming. Not the insult. The door. The deliberate choice to physically remove her child from the house. My sister sat curled into the corner of my couch holding the ultrasound image against her knee. 17 weeks pregnant. Terrified. And suddenly, I realized something horrifying. Our parents cared more about embarrassment than their own daughter sleeping safely indoors. I'd seen my parents angry before. Strict? Absolutely. Cold? Sometimes. But this was different. This wasn't punishment. This was exile. You're staying here, I told her. Not softly. Not uncertainly. Firm. Immediate. That's not a question. Josie nodded once. Didn't cry again. Didn't thank me either. And honestly? She didn't need to. Sisters don't keep score when the house is burning down around them. What I didn't know yet, what nobody knew yet, was that the identity of the baby's father would eventually destroy the very people who threw her away. Because my parents believed they were protecting the family's reputation. In reality, they were protecting the wrong people entirely. The Goodwins had a reputation in our town. My mother guarded it like a security system. Grace Fellowship Church. Third pew from the front left side every Sunday for 26 straight years. My father Frank served as a deacon. My mother Deborah chaired the women's ministry. Casseroles at funerals. Matching Tupperware at potlucks. Smiles polished so perfectly they almost looked rehearsed. Interesting thing about small-town respectability. Sometimes it's just performance with Bible verses attached. The pastor of Grace Fellowship was Greg Harmon. 63 years old. Silver hair. Voice smooth enough to convince people guilt and holiness were the same thing. Most of the town trusted him instinctively. And his son Ethan? Perfect. Absolutely perfect on paper. Engineering scholarship. Eagle Scout. Studying abroad in Germany. The kind of young man church mothers describe using phrases like good stock. Meanwhile, my family had 2 daughters. I was the reliable one. Physical therapist. Quiet. Predictable. Responsible enough nobody ever worried about me. Josie was different. Creative. Loud laugh. Changed majors twice. Fell in love with people instead of plans. Our mother called her the project. Never directly cruel enough for outsiders to notice. Just constant little corrections disguised as concern. People are watching, Myra. That was my mother's favorite sentence. Anytime emotions became inconvenient. Anytime reality threatened appearances. People are watching. And apparently, being pregnant without permission mattered more to her than motherhood itself. The dinner happened 2 weeks before Josie arrived at my apartment. Sunday night. Roast beef. Mashed potatoes. Aunt Carol pretending not to gossip while mentally recording every facial expression in the room for future distribution. Josie put her fork down first. Tiny sound. Barely noticeable. But somehow, everyone looked up immediately. Like the room sensed something coming. I need to tell you something. Silence. Clock ticking in the kitchen. My father chewing slowly. My mother already tense before hearing a single word. Then Josie inhaled once. I'm pregnant. And honestly? Everything after that happened so fast it still feels blurry. My father shoved his chair backward so violently it slammed into the wall. Face red instantly. Veins visible in his neck. You are no daughter of mine. 5 words. That was it. No, who's the father? No, are you okay? No concern whatsoever. Just rejection. Pure. Immediate. My mother's reaction came slower. Which somehow made it worse. She folded her napkin carefully. Placed it beside her plate. Then stood up. Walked calmly to the front door. Opened it. And pointed outside. Get out. No yelling. No tears. Just procedure. Like removing trash before company arrives. I looked at her in disbelief. Mom. She's your daughter. And my mother answered without even looking at Josie. Not anymore. Honestly? That sentence changed something inside me permanently. Because suddenly, I understood love in our family had always been conditional. Perform correctly. Appear respectable. Protect the image. Or lose your place entirely. Then my mother reached across the table. Removed the pearl earrings from Josie's ears. Family heirlooms passed down 3 generations. And quietly said, these belong to Goodwin women who know how to behave. I grabbed my coat immediately. Then my sister. And we walked out together into the rain while Aunt Carol stared at her sweet tea pretending this wasn't happening. The casserole dish still sat untouched on the counter. Perfectly arranged. Perfectly warm. While the family around it collapsed completely. Interesting metaphor, honestly. That was the last night I spoke to my parents for almost 2 years. And at the time, I still didn't know the most important part. Who the father was. Or why Josie looked more afraid of revealing his name than she did of losing our parents entirely. The first 3 months felt less like living And more like surviving quietly enough not to collapse. Josie slept on my couch. I picked up extra shifts at the rehabilitation hospital. And every single dollar suddenly had an assignment before it even reached my bank account. Rent. Prenatal vitamins. Groceries. Gas. Future diapers. Future formula. Future panic. Interesting thing about financial stress. It turns ordinary purchases into moral decisions. I stood in grocery aisles debating cereal brands like National Policy, generic pasta, store-brand oatmeal. Coupons folded inside my purse beside overdue utility notices. One morning, I sat at my kitchen table with coffee growing cold beside my elbow while calculating how long my savings would last. $14,211. That was the exact number. Not wealth. Not security. Just temporary oxygen. 8 months if nothing went wrong. Interesting calculation. Because life immediately started going wrong. My mother called the next morning at 7:15. Sharp. Early. Deliberate. Her voice sounded rehearsed already. Bring your sister home so she can apologize. Apologize. Interesting word for pregnancy. Josie still slept on my couch wrapped in the blue blanket while one hand rested protectively against her stomach. She has nothing to apologize for. Silence. Then my mother lowered her voice slightly. If you choose her side in this. Pause. Don't expect help from us again. Interesting threat. Because emotionally controlling families always frame abandonment like discipline instead of cruelty. No holidays. No support. No money. I stared at the rain outside my kitchen window for several seconds before answering. Then we'll figure it out. And honestly? That was the exact moment I stopped being my parents' daughter first. And became my sister's protector instead. My father texted later that night. Talk some sense into your sister. I read it 3 times. Then typed back. Talk some sense into your wife. He never answered. Not that night. Not for 2 years. The town handled the rest. Small towns don't need newspapers. They run on whispers. Margaret Patterson from Grace Fellowship spotted Josie's stomach at the grocery store from nearly 30 feet away. Actually turned her cart around mid-aisle. Didn't say hello. Didn't ask how she was doing. Just retreat. Like pregnancy itself might be contagious. 2 weeks later, Aunt Carol appeared at my apartment holding a white ceramic casserole dish with a chipped rim. My mother's signature move. Interesting how people sometimes deliver guilt disguised as food. Carol stayed 45 minutes exactly. Complimented my curtains. Asked if Josie was coping emotionally. Wanted to know whether the father planned on stepping up. Translation. Who ruined your sister? I answered politely. Shortly. Carefully. Because once you grow up inside gossip-heavy families, you learn conversations are rarely conversations. They're information collection. After Carol left, the casserole sat untouched in my refrigerator for 9 straight days. Tuna. Too much dill. Too much symbolism. Eventually, I scraped the whole thing into the trash while Josie slept. Because honestly, I'd rather eat ramen forever than consume pity seasoned with judgment. Meanwhile, Grace Fellowship Church decided humiliation should become public. I found out through Dr. Patrice Coleman at the hospital. Patrice was 50. Physical therapist. Sharp-eyed enough to notice truth before most people finished lying. She cornered me gently in the staff break room one Monday morning. You need to know what happened Sunday. And honestly, the expression on her face scared me immediately. Pastor Greg Harmon delivered a sermon using a hypothetical example. A young woman. Pregnant. Disobedient. Bringing shame onto her family. Interesting thing about church gossip. Nobody needs names once enough details exist. Every single person inside that sanctuary knew exactly who he meant. Patrice leaned against the counter slowly. Your mother sat in the front pew nodding the entire time. That sentence physically hurt. Not dramatically. Deeply. Like discovering someone attended your funeral emotionally before you actually died. I drove home after work gripping the steering wheel hard enough my fingers cramped. Didn't cry. Didn't call the church. Didn't confront anybody. Because honestly, some betrayals become too exhausting to explain aloud. That evening, while plugging Josie's phone into the charger beside the couch, the screen lit up briefly. One notification. One contact saved simply as E. Message preview. I think about him every day. Interesting. Not you. Him. I put the phone down immediately. Didn't unlock it. Didn't ask questions. But something about that message stayed lodged in my brain afterward like a splinter. Because suddenly, the father felt less like a deadbeat stranger and more like a missing piece. And Josie protected that missing piece with terrifying intensity. Months passed. Her stomach grew. Our lives shrank. Double shifts. Cheap groceries. Exhaustion so constant it stopped feeling temporary. I learned how to sleep in 90-minute intervals. Learned exactly which gas stations sold the cheapest milk. Learned how loneliness sounds at 2 a.m. while folding baby clothes alone beside unpaid bills. One evening, my supervisor offered me a promotion. Lead physical therapist at a larger hospital 90 minutes north. Better salary. Better future. Better everything. Except leaving Josie behind. I declined before she finished explaining benefits. Interesting thing about sacrifice. Sometimes nobody sees it except the people surviving because of it. A coworker named Derek asked me out around that same time. Coffee. Dinner. Normal adult things. I told him no. Not because I disliked him. Because my entire life currently revolved around holding another person together. And honestly, there wasn't enough left of me afterward to offer someone else. Then came the hospital night. 32 weeks pregnant. Saturday evening. I walked into my apartment after a 12-hour shift and found Josie sitting on the bathroom floor gripping the sink with both hands. Face flushed. Breathing shallow. I checked her blood pressure twice because the first reading scared me too much to trust. 158/98. Interesting numbers. Especially when attached to a pregnant woman already under chronic stress. We're going now. No debate. No hesitation. Just keys. Shoes. Rain hitting the windshield while Josie gripped the dashboard silently the entire drive. The ER doctor stabilized her within 2 hours. Gestational hypertension. Not preeclampsia yet. Close enough to terrify everyone involved. Mandatory bed rest. Weekly monitoring. No more diner shifts. Meaning suddenly, I became the only income entirely. I sat alone in the hallway outside her hospital room around 9:30 p.m. Fluorescent lights humming overhead. Vending machine buzzing nearby. And honestly, I broke a little. Not crying. Not panic. Just exhaustion heavy enough to feel physical. So I texted my mother. Simple message. Josie is hospitalized. Blood pressure complications. Please pray for her. The read receipt appeared 11 minutes later. Scene. That was it. No reply. No question. No concern. Nothing. I stared at that tiny read notification for nearly 5 straight minutes. Interesting how silence can feel louder than screaming sometimes. My mother knew her pregnant daughter was lying in a hospital bed, and consciously chose absence. That was the moment something inside me hardened permanently. Not hatred. Clarity. Because people reveal themselves most honestly when compassion costs them something. Micah James Goodwin arrived 6 weeks later. Tuesday morning. 6:47 a.m. 6 pounds 11 ounces. Healthy lungs. Curly dark hair that absolutely did not come from our side of the family. And honestly, the second I saw him, I understood why Josie fought so hard to protect him before he even existed. She held him against her chest, crying silently while hospital monitors beeped softly in the background. No flowers. No grandparents. No father pacing the hallway. Just me. The nurse asked who else should be listed as emergency contact. I answered before Josie could. Just me. The nurse looked up briefly, then quietly wrote my name twice. Interesting how strangers sometimes recognize abandonment faster than family does. That evening, while Micah slept curled against Josie's chest, she whispered something that still breaks my heart remembering it. I'm sorry he doesn't have more people. I moved my chair closer beside the bed. He has us. Pause. That's enough. But honestly, even then, I already knew there was someone else connected to this child. Someone important. Someone hidden behind a single mysterious letter on a glowing phone screen. E. And deep down, I had a growing suspicion the truth about Micah's father would eventually explode far beyond our apartment walls. I just didn't know yet. It would destroy 2 families simultaneously. Micah turned 8 months old the week everything finally cracked open. By then, our apartment no longer felt temporary. It felt like survival had unpacked permanently. Diapers stacked beside unpaid electric bills. Formula coupons clipped onto the refrigerator with magnets from places we couldn't afford visiting. Micah's crib squeezed beside my bookshelf because the second bedroom doubled as both nursery and storage closet. And honestly, I loved that child so much it physically frightened me sometimes. Not because he was mine. Because he wasn't. And I still would have burned my entire life down to protect him. Micah laughed exactly like Josie. Sudden. Explosive. Like happiness surprised him every single time it appeared. He also had Ethan Harmon's eyes. I didn't know that yet officially. But somewhere deep down, my instincts already suspected. The clues existed everywhere once I stopped avoiding them. The mysterious texts from E. Josie crying whenever Pastor Greg Harmon appeared on local church live streams. And the biggest clue of all, the absolute terror in her face anytime someone asked about the father. Not anger. Not resentment. Fear. Interesting difference. People hide deadbeats out of embarrassment. They hide powerful people out of self-protection. The letter appeared on a Thursday. Completely by accident. I came home early after a patient canceled afternoon therapy. Rain outside again. Honestly, every important disaster in my life seems connected to rain somehow. Josie had fallen asleep on the couch beside Micah's crib after another sleepless night. One arm hanging loosely off the cushion. Baby monitor glowing softly beside her. And on the floor, half slid beneath the coffee table, sat an envelope. Cream-colored. Bent slightly in the middle. No stamp. No address. Just handwriting across the front. Josie. I picked it up automatically thinking it was another medical bill. Then the paper inside shifted. And a folded photograph slipped halfway out. Young man. Dark hair. University graduation robe. Arm wrapped around my sister's shoulders. Ethan Harmon. My stomach dropped instantly. Interesting how truth sometimes arrives physically before emotionally. Like your body understands danger faster than your brain can process it. I stared at the photograph for several seconds. Then unfolded the letter slowly. The first line punched the air from my lungs immediately. Dear Josie. I think about him every day. Him. Micah. Not hypothetical. Not uncertainty. His son. I sat down hard against the edge of the couch before continuing. The letter shook slightly in my hands. Not because I was angry. Because suddenly, our entire family destruction rearranged itself into something far uglier. Ethan wrote about Germany first. Munich engineering program. Research internship. How he checked his phone constantly waiting for updates about the pregnancy. Then came the sentence that changed everything. My father said if the church found out, it would destroy everything. Everything. Interesting word. Because apparently everything did not include my sister sleeping in the rain after being thrown out. I kept reading. And honestly, each paragraph made me sicker. Pastor Greg Harmon knew. Not eventually. Not recently. From the beginning. He knew his son got Josie pregnant before the dinner where my parents disowned her. He knew during the sermon humiliating her publicly from the pulpit. And worst of all? He convinced Ethan to stay silent until after graduation abroad because the scandal would ruin his future. Interesting strategy. Sacrifice the girl. Protect the boy. Classic. The letter continued. I wanted to come home sooner. But my father said your family would calm down eventually. Calm down. Interesting phrase considering Josie lost her parents, church community, financial security, and home simultaneously. I read the final paragraph twice. I'm coming back in June. I want to tell the truth publicly. Dad says it would destroy both families, but I can't pretend Micah isn't mine anymore. Then beneath everything. I love you. I love him. I'm sorry I waited this long. Ethan. Silence filled the apartment afterward. Micah sleeping softly nearby. Rain against windows. My sister breathing quietly on the couch, completely unaware her secret just detonated inside my hands. And honestly, I felt furious. Not at Ethan exactly. At the machinery surrounding him. Because suddenly, everything made sense. The sermon. The public shame. The speed of my parents' rejection. Pastor Harmon wasn't condemning sin. He was controlling fallout. My father didn't throw Josie out because she embarrassed the family. He threw her out because protecting the church mattered more than protecting his daughter. I folded the letter carefully. Placed it back inside the envelope. Then sat there staring at Micah's crib for almost 20 straight minutes. Interesting thing about betrayal. The deeper version isn't discovering someone lied. It's realizing multiple adults coordinated the lie together. Josie woke up around 5:40. Immediately noticed the envelope in my lap. And honestly, I've never seen fear hit someone's face that fast before. Pure panic. Like her nervous system already knew hiding was over. Myra. I held up the photograph quietly. Ethan Harmon? Silence. Huge silence. Then tears filled her eyes instantly. Not because I knew. Because she was exhausted from carrying it alone. She nodded once. Tiny movement. Massive consequence. I leaned back slowly against the couch. Pastor Harmon knew? Another nod. And Mom and Dad? Josie wiped both cheeks roughly. No. Pause. At least. I don't think so. Interesting answer. Because deep down, Even she wasn't completely sure anymore. Then finally, the whole story came out. Ethan and Josie met during a church outreach trip 2 summers earlier. Late-night conversations stacking chairs after youth events. Coffee runs. Inside jokes. Small-town love growing quietly beneath everyone's assumptions. They kept the relationship private initially because Pastor Harmon obsessed over Ethan's image publicly. Future ministry leader. Example to young men. Interesting burden to place on a 22-year-old engineering student. Then Ethan left for Germany 6 weeks before Josie discovered she was pregnant. She told him immediately. He panicked initially. Not because he doubted the baby. Because of his father. Pastor Greg Harmon called Josie personally 3 days later. Asked to meet privately in his office. And honestly? What happened there made my blood boil. He told my pregnant 23-year-old sister that good women protect men's futures when mistakes happen. Mistakes. Interesting word for a child. Then he asked her not to reveal Ethan's name publicly until after graduation abroad. Temporary silence. That was the deal. He promised Ethan would come home. Promised support. Promised marriage discussions eventually. Promised everything desperate pregnant women want to believe. Then the dinner happened before Ethan could return. My parents exploded. Josie froze. And suddenly revealing Ethan's identity became dangerous. Because exposing the pastor's son meant destroying the church. Destroying Ethan's family. Destroying the image everyone spent decades building. Interesting how institutions convince vulnerable people their suffering serves a higher purpose. So you protected them, I whispered. Josie looked toward Micah sleeping inside the crib. They said if people found out. Pause. Everyone would hate him before he was even born. Him. Always him first. That broke me. Because my sister genuinely believed silence protected her son somehow. Even while abandonment destroyed her life piece by piece. I stood up immediately. Grabbed my car keys. Josie looked alarmed. Myra, where are you going? Church. Her face drained instantly. No. Not loud. Terrified. You can't tell them. Interesting reaction. Because victims conditioned by manipulation always fear consequences aimed at the powerful. I crouched beside the couch carefully. Josie. Pause. They let you carry this alone. Then softer. They watched Mom and Dad throw you out. Tears rolled down her face silently. And honestly? Mine almost did too. Because suddenly, I understood the entire structure perfectly. Church reputation. Male reputation. Family image. All protected. While one pregnant girl absorbed every consequence alone. Micah started crying softly inside the crib then. Tiny sound. Tiny human. Center of a scandal created entirely by adults too cowardly to tell the truth. Josie picked him up immediately. Held him against her chest while whispering apologies into his hair he was far too young to understand. And in that exact moment? Watching my sister apologize to a child for surviving abandonment. I made a decision that changed everything. Because honestly, some lies become too expensive to protect. And Pastor Greg Harmon was about to discover exactly how dangerous abandoned daughters become once they stop staying quiet. Grace Fellowship Church smelled like lemon polish and wet umbrellas the morning everything finally collapsed. Sunday service. 10 a.m. Families filling pews. Children in stiff church clothes swinging their legs beneath wooden benches. And my parents sitting exactly where they always sat. Third pew from the front left side. Perfect posture. Perfect image. Perfect lie. Interesting thing about public reputations. They look strongest seconds before cracking. I almost didn't go. Honestly? I sat in my car outside the church gripping the steering wheel so tightly my wrists hurt. Because deep down, I already knew there was no version of this ending clean enough to save everyone. Some truths arrive like surgery. Necessary. Bloody. Permanent. Josie stayed home with Micah. Terrified. Exhausted. Still instinctively trying to protect people who abandoned her. But I brought the letter. Cream envelope folded carefully inside my purse beside the photograph of Ethan holding her at graduation. Evidence. Truth. And honestly? The weight of paper can feel terrifying when it carries enough honesty to destroy entire communities. The sanctuary choir started singing as I entered. Soft piano. Voices rising beneath stained glass light. And for one brief second, I remembered childhood. Christmas services. My father lifting me so I could see candlelight above the crowd. My mother adjusting Josie's dress collar before Easter photos. Interesting how memory keeps preserving tenderness even after reality contradicts it completely. I slid quietly into the back pew. Pastor Greg Harmon stood near the altar greeting families with polished warmth. Silver hair. Perfect smile. Calm authority practiced over decades. And honestly? Watching him shake hands while knowing exactly what he allowed my sister to endure made me physically sick. Service began normally. Prayer. Announcements. Missionary updates from Guatemala. Routine holiness. Then Pastor Harmon stepped behind the pulpit. And suddenly, I understood how dangerous charisma becomes when mixed with unchecked power. He opened his Bible slowly. Looked across the congregation. Then smiled gently. Today I want to speak about forgiveness. Interesting topic. Especially from a man who helped exile a pregnant woman to protect his son's future. I felt anger rise instantly. Hot. Sharp. Alive. Pastor Harmon continued. Sometimes families experience disappointment. Disappointment. Interesting word for abandonment. And in those moments, we must remember God's standards do not bend for emotional convenience. There it was. Not names. Never names. Just enough public shaming disguised as righteousness for everybody to understand exactly who he meant. I looked toward my parents. My mother nodded slowly beside my father exactly like Patrice described months earlier. Agreement. Approval. Absolute certainty they were the righteous victims in someone else's story. And honestly? That's the moment I stood up. Not dramatic. Not angry. Just done. Wooden pew creaking loudly beneath me. Heads turning immediately. Pastor Harmon paused mid-sermon. Myra? Interesting. Because powerful people always sound confused first when someone interrupts the script. I walked slowly down the aisle holding the envelope against my side. Church silent now. No coughing. No movement. Just attention. My mother's face tightened instantly. Tiny panic appearing behind her eyes. Because somewhere deep down, she already sensed this moment wasn't controllable anymore. I stopped 3 feet from the pulpit. Then looked directly at Pastor Harmon. You knew. Simple sentence. Massive impact. Confusion rippled through the sanctuary immediately. Pastor Harmon adjusted his glasses carefully. I'm sorry. Interesting tactic. Delay. Force clarification publicly. I pulled Ethan's photograph from the envelope first. Held it up. Your son is Micah's father. Silence detonated. Absolute silence. Somebody gasped near the choir section. My mother physically jerked backward in the pew. And honestly? I'll never forget the expression on my father's face. Not anger. Recognition. Like suddenly the last 3 years replayed differently inside his mind all at once. Pastor Harmon stepped away from the pulpit immediately. Myra, this is not the appropriate setting. Appropriate? Interesting word. Because apparently humiliating my sister publicly during sermons qualified as appropriate. But truth didn't. I unfolded Ethan's letter carefully. Hands steady. Voice steady. Years of physical therapy taught me calm matters most during crisis. Then I read aloud. My father said if the church found out, it would destroy everything. Shock moved visibly across the congregation. Whispers spreading pew to pew like fire finding dry grass. I kept reading. He asked me not to reveal my name publicly until after graduation. Then finally. I love him. I'm sorry I waited this long. Ethan. The church exploded into noise afterward. People whispering openly now. Turning toward Pastor Harmon. Toward my parents. Toward each other. Because suddenly, the scandal wasn't an irresponsible girl anymore. It was institutional hypocrisy. Pastor Harmon raised both hands immediately. Please, everyone remain calm. Interesting request. Because calm only benefits the people who controlled the narrative originally. My mother stood up suddenly. Face completely white. Micah is Ethan's? There it was. Not concern about Josie. Not regret. Lineage. Because suddenly the baby she rejected became connected to church royalty. And honestly? That realization disgusted me more than the original abandonment. My father looked physically ill. Actually gripping the pew for balance. 3 years. 3 years he spent believing his daughter ruined the family while protecting another man's reputation. Then the back sanctuary doors opened. And Ethan walked in. Reins still clinging to his jacket. Travel bag over one shoulder. Germany tag still attached near the handle. Interesting timing. Because apparently truth decided nobody deserved preparation anymore. The entire sanctuary turned simultaneously. Ethan looked exhausted. Older. Terrified. But the second he saw me holding the letter, he nodded once. Like surrender finally arrived. Pastor Harmon whispered sharply. Ethan. Warning. Control. Father first. But Ethan ignored him completely. Instead, he walked directly down the aisle toward my parents. Then quietly said the sentence that shattered whatever remained of their certainty. Micah is my son. My mother sat down hard. Actually missed part of the pew. My father stared at Ethan blankly. And honestly? I think that was the moment guilt finally entered him completely. Not because Josie suffered. Because he realized who he chose over her. Ethan turned toward the congregation next. Voice shaking slightly. My father asked us to stay quiet. Gasps again. Bigger this time. Because once powerful men get named publicly, people suddenly start remembering other uncomfortable things too. Pastor Harmon moved toward him quickly. You don't understand what you're doing. Interesting sentence. Because manipulative authority figures always frame truth as destruction instead of accountability. Ethan looked directly at his father. No. Pause. I finally understand exactly what you did. And honestly? That sentence hit harder than yelling ever could. The sanctuary dissolved afterward. Church elders whispering frantically. Women crying. People leaving pews to avoid being visibly attached to either side. My mother approached me slowly. Hands trembling. And quietly whispered. Why didn't Josie tell us? Interesting question. Because buried underneath it was the ugliest truth of all. She already knew the answer. Josie stayed silent because she understood exactly who our parents would protect if forced to choose. Reputation. Church standing. Male future. Never her. I looked at my mother for several seconds before answering. You threw her out before she felt safe enough to. Simple sentence. Permanent wound. Tears filled my mother's eyes instantly. Real ones this time maybe. Or maybe shame. Honestly? After enough damage, the difference stops mattering. My father never spoke during the rest of the service. Not once. Just sat staring at the pulpit while decades of certainty collapsed around him publicly. Interesting thing about men who build identities around moral authority. Hypocrisy destroys them from the inside first. 3 hours later, my parents stood outside my apartment door for the first time in nearly 2 years. My mother holding flowers. My father looking older somehow. Smaller. Josie froze the second she saw them through the peephole. Micah asleep against her shoulder. And honestly, I didn't know whether opening the door counted as mercy or another mistake. But I opened it anyway. Nobody spoke initially. Then my father looked at Micah. Really looked at him. Curly dark hair. Harmon eyes. His grandson. And suddenly, Frank Goodwin started crying. Not politely. Not controlled. Years of certainty collapsing all at once beneath one sleeping child. I'm sorry, he whispered. Interesting words. Because sometimes apologies arrive years too late but still honestly enough to hurt. Josie didn't answer immediately. Couldn't. Honestly? None of us knew what forgiveness was supposed to look like after this much damage. My mother reached toward Micah carefully. Then stopped halfway. Like she no longer trusted herself permission to touch him. And maybe she shouldn't have. Not yet. Eventually. Very quietly. Josie asked the question none of us escaped. Would you have thrown me out if he wasn't Ethan's? Silence. Huge silence. Because everybody inside that apartment already knew the truth. My parents never answered. And honestly? They didn't need to. Sometimes silence confesses everything.